before we start, I would just like to say that some of our content may be triggering for some of our listeners and viewers. If you need help, please see your GP or check out our show notes for a list of support services. While advice is given during these podcasts, this is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice. Neither the host nor the guests of this podcast may be held responsible for any action or claims in any way resulting from the information provided. Hi, and welcome to the Tough Mothers podcast and Tough Mothers TV. I'm feeling very honoured to bring you this interview today. It's with my friend Rebecca Anderson. And Becca and I have been friends for a few years now. She's an amazing mother to her 3-year-old boy, Clark. And she opens up to us today about her depression and how she's had depression for most of her life. So when it came time to having this baby, she very much assumed she would be getting postnatal depression and what it would look like because she'd experienced depression for a very, very long time. Turns out it was nothing like what she expected. She talks us through that a little bit today, and also the techniques that she used that helped her, and what she really wants you to know if you're struggling with postnatal depression or postpartum depression, and what she would tell herself if she could go back. I'm so blessed to have such amazing friends who are so open and so vulnerable in their stories, and I hope that you enjoy this as much as I did, and I hope that you get a lot out of it because there is so much in here. Enjoy. Hi Beck, thank you so much for being here today.
Hey, how are you?
Good. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us and to share your story, because what's different about you, I think, is that because you've sort of struggled with depression for the majority of your life, you kind of expected that maybe you would get postnatal depression when you had your first baby. And I would just love to talk a little bit about how your expectation and the reality, whether they met or whether it was very different, and go from there.
Yeah, I, like you said, have struggled with depression most of my life. And I guess coming from already experiencing a lot of depression, anxiety, and also I've had body image issues, which is definitely a big thing when you become a mum, even when you're pregnant, your body changing. I thought that I had everything planned out and I was ready if things were going to go south with my mental health again. But it was completely different to what I had experienced for 15 years prior to becoming a mum. I had never experienced so much anxiety about leaving the house and what people thought of me when I was out. I was constantly worrying if I was breastfeeding, if someone was staring at me, or thinking like what you see in social media, like everyone saying how you shouldn't breastfeed in public, or how other people think that it's perfect to breastfeed in public. I didn't want my son to have a meltdown when I was out because I didn't know if I would be able to handle it or if I would know the correct thing to do, or people just giving me advice and people would give me advice and I would instantly feel like the worst mum because I hadn't thought of it myself. So there was definitely a big difference to what I had experienced in the past and then what I experienced when Clark came along.
Yeah. Do you mind just sharing a little bit, like you're saying it's very different, what your depression sort of manifested like previously before you had children?
Yeah, so I was an elite gymnast, so my depression was definitely focused on, not wanting to let people down. And if I did, I would instantly go into a big spiral of just feeling like I had crumbled everyone else's life as well as my own. I did try and commit suicide when I was 19.
I did not know that.
yeah.
Wow.
So I was in a mental health ward for 3 weeks. And I also come from my mum's side of the family. Her brother and father, both committed suicide. So we have come from a family who are always so open about everything and anything. But my depression, I felt like I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I was so embarrassed that I had got this in the family, as well as my uncle and grandfather. And I didn't want to let anyone down and I saw what my mum went through with her brother and dad, and I didn't want to be that burden on her. And I would never say that they were a burden on her, but I didn't want to be that person who then made her life more stressful. So I really did just get into a really deep depression, but then I would come quite out of it, and I would be perfectly fine. So I have been told before that I have bipolar depression, which is very different to bipolar. So bipolar, usually you have the highs and then also the lows, but I just have lows. So if something happens that some people would normally find it quite a normal stress, I literally go into wanting to commit suicide quite often. And that's just the way that my depression works. So
do you experience that now as well since becoming a mum, or was that something just you had before you had Clark?
No, so I still do experience it. I haven't had that for about a year, but when Clark was around 2, I got quite bad again, and I think the difference from having mental health issues before becoming a mum is I can stand up and say I need help. I know my my triggers. I know when I'm going into a spiral, and a lot of my family members also know pretty much straight away when things are getting bad for me. I withdraw. I don't want to talk to anyone. I stare out the window and don't really engage in anyone. I go from either eating a lot to not wanting to eat at all. And I get very dark very quickly, which a lot of people don't understand. My husband also has depression and anxiety, and he has always said, I don't understand like how you could hurt yourself, or how you could feel like you want to hurt yourself but still want to be here. So I, for example, could definitely easily be like, oh, I just don't want to be here anymore, and then a minute later I'm like, oh no, I do. I just feel like I need something, an outlet to get out the frustrations and depressions.
Yeah. So what do you use as an outlet? Because that sounds really exhausting, like challenging, to manage that, and especially with saying with just the next minute. So what do you have like as an outlet when you get like that?
I don't actually have many hobbies, which is a detriment to me. But
you're a mum. We don't have hobbies. Yeah. Our hobbies is childcare. Sorry, interrupt.
I have been getting really into Pilates reformer, and I love it. I'm not one for yoga. Everyone's like, oh, you should try yoga. Like, nope, not for me. But Pilates reformer is really something that I'm getting a lot out of, and I feel like it is a bit more calming than just going to the gym and lifting weights, which I think is really good for your mind as well. And I'm also trying to write a book.
Oh, yay! That's exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind, can we just go back just 3 years to when Clark was born, or when you were pregnant and you were about to have him, and obviously you said you were expecting to have some sort of maybe depressive or unsure. I don't know. Did you think it would be depression? Did you think it would be bipolar or anxiety, or just maybe a combination of all?
I think that I thought that it was going to be depression.
Mm-hmm.
Only because I'm quite, I like things to be perfect. And if they're not, then I get really, really angry at myself. And I like to do things at the top rather than just mediocre.
Mm-hmm.
So when Clark was born, I thought that breastfeeding just happened. I thought that they just jumped on and we were good to go. And
that's actually the number one thing, my book, Beck and I are friends, so she knows my
yeah.
book and you've read my book, I think, as well. That was the number one thing that I heard over and over and over again from mums, to the point where I thought this almost deserves its own book, was I wish someone had told me how hard breastfeeding is.
100%.
Yeah.
And everyone that I have spoken to that have either been pregnant or they've just had a baby, I'm like, just don't put the pressure on yourself to think that breastfeeding is the be all and end all. And I wish that someone had told me that. Because Clark was in special care for 3 days when he was born, and there was nothing major wrong with him. He just came out too fast, and there was still the muck on his lungs that he couldn't get off. And so I never got to have those first 3 days of trying to breastfeed him and trying to get my milk in. So I was pumping for nearly an hour every 3 hours.
Wow.
And as well as trying to give him some formula. And then when he came out of special care and I had him for one night before we went home, I had no idea what I was doing. And neither did he. He was a really lazy baby, and it took us quite a long time to get the lactation consultant to come in and show me what to do. And then for 4 months, he was on a nipple shield, and even then I felt like I couldn't go out and breastfeed in public because I had to do this whole rigmarole of trying to get everything to work. And that was just, I knew that I was going to spiral then, because it was something that wasn't working, and I wasn't doing properly.
And it wasn't going to plan, and you weren't excelling at it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that set you up for a fall, which is actually I find it quite disgusting to even that women, even, this is, sorry, nothing against you, I mean in general, that women are not informed enough and educated enough to know that this is just completely unrealistic expectations that we give ourselves. I did it too. And so, if you do research, and thankfully now they say, one of the number one triggers for postnatal depression is wanting to be supermum. And that is just not possible. And I think there's so much room for education and information for women before they have children, to get to a point where they're okay with, not doing whatever it is that they plan to do, whether it's breastfeeding or co-sleeping or whatever it is, So it makes me really, really angry and extremely sad as well, because so many women suffer, and this podcast wouldn't exist. It shouldn't actually exist. It's quite ridiculous.
We ended up putting Clark on formula. I say we, like my husband and I were both breastfeeding. But Craig ended up saying to me, like, this is not worth it. We need to make the decision, and you need to stop feeling bad about the fact that breastfeeding isn't working, because I would sit in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. bawling my eyes out whilst trying to feed Clark, and it just wouldn't work. And I was stressed that he wasn't eating enough, and that was the reason why he wasn't sleeping. And then it all boiled down to the fact that it was all my fault.
Yeah.
So we decided to put him on formula, and honestly, as soon as he went on formula, I felt like I was 20 kilos lighter.
Wow.
He didn't really change much as a baby. Like he was always a very, very happy, active baby, and still is. But yeah, it was like I got in my own head, and
Mm.
I was doing bad things to my son when I wasn't at all, and I made the
No.
right decision for us.
No, you were doing the best you can,
Yeah. And
and
I think it was also really hard as well, because when we went and asked, um, how do we put him on formula? Because we had no idea what we were doing. And they said to us, oh, you should really, really try and breastfeed and persevere. Look, he's putting on weight, he's doing fine. And Craig was there and he said, well, he's doing fine, but is my wife?
oh
And
yes, I love it. That is awesome. That is so good. It's a fantastic question. The question that should be asked. Yes, the baby's doing fine. The baby's putting on weight. What about my wife?
yeah, it is the one question that should be asked. I'm sorry, but the baby will survive. But you're looking out for your wife, your daughter, your sister, and that's the person who should be most protected by everything.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, you are the lifeblood to this child.
Yeah.
So if you're like, I always, to kind of make it a bit fun, I always kind of talk about, these champagne towers where you put glasses on top of each other and then you pour the top glass and it fills the others. Well, if the top glass isn't getting filled, neither are the others, and we're the top glass. So to think that like we're going to feed the baby who's down here somewhere and the top glass is empty, it's just, it's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And it's like that as well, Craig would come home from work and he would say, well, what have you eaten today? I'm like, oh, nothing. And how many feeds has Clark had today? Oh, about 5. And it's like, why am I not looking after myself? Because if I'm not looking after myself, then like it like Clark will start to feel it. Like you need to. And I think that's why Craig asked the question as well. It wasn't just around, it was around physically and mentally. Is my wife okay?
Yeah. Well, if you're not putting fuel into your body, you can't, look after him.
The fuel. Yeah.
Absolutely. I know. What an amazing husband you have there. We need more like that. Yeah, he's pretty cool. That's it. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I suppose those were kind of triggers for you where you went, well, you said before I was failing I'm not sure if that's the word you used, but failing my child, or I wasn't,
definitely,
that led you into your depression. But it's wonderful that when you did actually put yourself first, or your husband put you first, your husband insisted you put yourself first, how things changed. And you said 20 kilo weight was lifted off your shoulders. That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. And I also I had really, really good mothers group, and I was always comparing myself to I remember the first 2 mothers group, I let Clark cry most of the time because I didn't want to breastfeed in front of them. And then I think one of the girls like came up to me and she's like, let's catch up, and like it was just really, really nice for someone to reach out and I think see that you were also struggling with the situation. And so it was nice to have that. And then she was explaining how she was having all these difficulty with breastfeeding, and she was on a nipple shield, and I was like, wow, I really am not alone here. It's not just me, and that's how I get as well. I definitely think that it's only me that is struggling with all these things, when it's not. It's a whole world of women out there that are struggling.
And that's why I admire what you're doing, being so vocal about your story and your journey, and sharing everything down to the finest detail, because you help people by telling your story, and they help you by telling their story. And I think that the fact that we don't talk about it and we pretend that we're all Instagram mums is it's quite ridiculous, isn't it? Like, it's, you know, imagine if you had walked into the mothers group and went, "Hi, I'm Beck. This is my boy Clark. I'm struggling with breastfeeding, so I'm using a nipple shield. So, you know, suck it up," or whatever it is
Oh my
that you
God,
want to say, you know. And they all went, "Hey, welcome, me too." Imagine how wonderful that would be, rather than turning up and, you know, make sure that your no hair's out of place and your baby doesn't cry. And you're like, when did we? Why?
I know. It's like, when did we think that like we needed to be like that?
Oh no.
Because it was like I walked into, and probably two of my closest friends from my mother's group. I always thought that they just looked absolutely beautiful and perfect, and I was like, oh God, I really need to step up my game and start start putting on some makeup and some nice clothes. And in hindsight, we were all struggling with the same issues, and you know, everyone just puts this face on like everything's okay, and I just wish that we didn't have to do that.
Wait, I'm going to change it.
I want to beat down that stigma of those Instagram mums.
I know. Well, that's not real either, you know. That's just one photo. So who knows what's going on behind that photo? But I think it is, it's so important, because everybody has something going on in their lives. Something, you know. And it would be great if we could talk to each other about it and,
I agree.
You know, be honest.
And that's why I'm so open.
Yeah.
And I tell people my story so that they know that it's okay to say that they're not okay.
Just going back to that, sorry, do you mind? So did you write from the beginning? Did you just go, okay, I'm not feeling good, I'm going to just, you know, tell my mum and my husband straight away?
Well, I actually, because I've been under psychiatrist since I was 15, 16, I always knew about psychologists and psychiatrists out there. So, but I switched to a like a postnatal psychiatrist, and I was also seeing Gidget House, a psychologist from there, even before Clark was born. And I actually can't remember who recommended Gidget to us, but God, we owe them all the money in the world, really. But I was seeing my psychologist, Chris, from Gidget House, I think from around 6 months. And I kept on seeing her after Clark was born. And then they recommended me to a psychiatrist, and we didn't click. And I am happy to say that we didn't click, and I moved on to a different one. And I would say that I was put on medication probably when Clark was 6 months old, and am still on medication. And there is no date in me coming off the medication, which I'm totally fine with. But I think that I'm really lucky for my story, because I had already built up that support before he was even born. And I was already talking about the stress and pressures that I felt before Clark was even born. And then after, it was amazing, because she could come to my house and Clark would either be sleeping or he would just be bopping on his bouncer in front of us whilst we were talking. And I was just really, really thankful to have, I think I would have nearly about 10 people that I called and said that I wasn't okay.
Wow.
And reached out to.
Just going back to our conversation about women not telling how it is. How do you're so good at speaking out and asking for help. How do you encourage someone who feels like maybe they're not bad, and like it's not bad enough for me, or I'm not struggling enough or something? What do you think? This is a huge question, by the way. What advice do you think you could give somebody who, you know, so they don't feel so vulnerable and say, hey, I'm not coping? Like, I don't know, is there something that you could think of that they could say instead?
I think It's a very hard question.
Sorry.
That's good. I think that if you're not feeling right after 3 weeks of feeling bad, then you should just, even if there's just one person in your life that you feel like you could go to and say, I just don't think that it's going right. I don't think I'm coping well. And I don't think that it's normal to be feeling the way that I'm feeling. Then that one person can then be your sounding board and be your go-to person. And then they can also then reach out to the wider network of it, even if you're, I don't know, an expat and have no family here, but then you've got that circle of friends who are your family.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents aren't in contact with their families, so their friends are their people.
You just need to find your people.
Yeah, you do. I'm really lucky with all the people that I have. And we've kind of really been, you have to be picky with your friends, I think, this day and age. But I told Craig that I wasn't doing okay, and instantly behind my back, which I'm happy about because I'm still here now, he told my mum, he told my best friends that I wasn't doing okay. And then a plan was put in place for me to get help.
That's awesome.
And so if you can just say to one person that you just don't think you're doing right, that you're not feeling right, then that one person can then help. Yeah. It only takes one person to help. And if you can only help one person, then you've done your job.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And even just sometimes, if you do feel like it's minor, just speaking it out loud to somebody it's like literally getting it off your chest. And I always say, because of this predicament that we're in society where women are meant to be super mum, speaking out and putting your hand up and saying, you know what, I'm not okay is such a strength rather than the weakness that we perceive it to be. It's like, I'm weak, I have to ask for help. It's actually such an amazing strength,
Yeah. So, and I'm definitely an advocate for women's mental health, but also, men struggle with postnatal depression and anxiety. And I found after maybe 9 months, when Clark was on the go and he was moving and wanted to be into everything, I noticed that Craig wasn't really getting involved as much when we went out with Clark. And I was really thinking, like, there must be something going on here. And it turns out that Craig has postnatal anxiety, and men can get it.
Of course, yes, of course.
Yeah, and his anxiety was going outside with Clark, because Clark is such a boisterous kid, and Clark pushing someone, or and it just stems from everything. And then Craig ended up saying, I think I need to go and see someone because I shouldn't be feeling like this. So it just takes one person to say it to, and then to help you get to the point that you need to get to.
Yeah, and like you said before, sort of like a sounding board as well, like that you just, if it's another mother, for instance, that they say either, I feel the same way, or I felt that way before, and, it just lifts that weight off your shoulders. And then if you think that maybe it's not worth seeing someone for, she might be able to tell you, yes, it is,
Yeah. Well, just literally within the last month, one of the mums from Clark's daycare came up to me and said, "Oh, my son always talks about Clark at home. Do you think that we could have a play date?" And I was like, yes, of course. Anyways, it turns out that Clark and her son you would think that they're identical personalities, because they are both the exact same child. And it is so nice to have someone to talk to and complain about the fact that your kids are exactly the same. They're both crazy. But it's so nice to have that.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
you guys can share in that conversation
Yeah.
and compare notes. It's
Yeah.
awesome, you know, like we laugh about it,
Yeah.
but it's so true because it's just,
Mm.
it's like a hug. It's like someone's putting their arm around and going, I get it. I'm here
I
with
feel
you.
it.
We're in the same space, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, that's wonderful. That's so
definitely.
good. So, how are you doing now? Like, actually, let's track back a little bit. So you went on medication, and then you said you were seeing a psychiatrist and the lady from the Gidget house as well.
Yeah. Yep.
And kind of what sort of things, sort of techniques and stuff did you put in place to
Well,
support yourself?
so one thing that I definitely didn't do, and I was protecting Craig with this, is I never ever said I need some time to myself.
Mhm.
For about the first year, I would always just say, no, I'm fine. And I wouldn't, I would always go somewhere with Craig and Clark. I would never, go somewhere on my own. My best friend got married in Fiji when Clark was 3 months old, and I was her maid of honor and had to do the hens party when Clark was 6 weeks old. And I'm sitting in the bathroom at like a hotel pumping whilst everyone else is out there drinking. And the whole time I'm kind of messaging Craig, like, what's going on? What's happening? I never let Craig kind of do his own thing. With Clark. But after that, I really found that having even just a morning to myself and going to have breakfast. We now have a weekly planner, so if I have in the planner that I'm going to the gym on a certain day, I'm going to the gym. Craig plays soccer every Saturday afternoon, so I get a certain part of the weekend to myself as well, which I think is really, really important, just to take
Yeah.
some time to yourself, even if it's just a short walk
Mm.
outside, or, I don't
It's
know,
just
go
some
and
mental
treat
space, I
yourself.
think, isn't
Yeah,
it? Like it's just that space because as a mother and fathers as well, but you know,
yeah,
I work with mothers.
yeah,
When you're with your child, it's like you're constantly looking, like it's not even literally looking. It's your brain's like, what's that noise? And this. So
yeah,
to just have that space in your brain where you can just go, okay, we just take a breath now, of being
mm,
outside, going for a walk, or going to the gym, or catching up with girlfriends, or
yeah. And
yeah,
I think even when Clark was young, even just taking him for a walk in the pram with a friend, because they're so young, they're kind of like little potatoes, all they do is just lie there. So it was nice to just go for a walk with one of my friends and have just a conversation that wasn't about Clark.
yeah.
um, was really, really helpful as well.
Mm.
um, but the time to myself and actually getting to the gym and doing something and getting moving is a big, big positive for me.
Awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. That's such a big thing. I mean, there's so much research being done about exercise and how it literally trains your body, but also trains your brain.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so that's fantastic.
Mm. Been trying meditation, but I'm
Yeah,
not very good at it.
nobody is.
No.
I think meditation, that's why it's called a practice, because you just keep practicing. Nobody's ever a meditation master. Everyone just does a meditation practice. But honestly,
Yeah.
just keep
Yeah.
trying, because I think it's just one of those amazing tools for mothers
Mm.
in particular to get that switch off, for
Yes.
however long you choose to do it. My
Mm.
meditation lasts about 20 minutes, where you're just
Yeah.
not thinking. I mean, obviously the kids need to be in a safe space, but we're not thinking, and you get in,
Yeah.
your brain gets that space to just take a deep breath and
Yeah.
relax. I think meditation is a huge thing. So
Yeah.
how are you now? How are you feeling now?
Yeah. I've been okay. I The last 6 months have been a little bit strange for us. I've been getting really, really bad nausea and random bouts of vomiting. And I wouldn't say that it is coinciding with COVID, because I've actually really benefited from, the lockdowns, and because I am at my best when I'm with people. So with Craig working from home, me working from home, I've just absolutely loved it. Craig thinks that I'm the most annoying person on earth, but yeah, I've really, really benefited from it. But I've had these random things, and like my stomach blows up like I'm 6 months pregnant, and it turned like I've had all these different tests done, and they're now saying that it is just down to anxiety, and that's just one of the symptoms that I'm getting, which really confuses me because I have been in therapy for so many years. I don't understand how I don't know what my like stresses are or what sets me off. Because my psychologist said to me, okay, well, what do you think is stressing you out during the day? Because it comes on at 2 p.m. every single day.
Oh, wow.
And I couldn't tell her. I said, there was only one thing that I could pinpoint was making me actually physically sick. And I've pushed that aside, and yeah, I still can't put my finger on what it is. So we're working through that to try and figure out how I reduce the anxiety of everyday life. But I don't know how you do that when you
Must be
don't really
something
know what it is.
unconscious if you're not aware of what
Yeah.
it is.
So we think that it could potentially be from when I was an elite gymnast, something to do with maybe because I was a gymnast from 5 to 15. So yeah, we do think that it's probably something that stems from that, but we don't. Yeah, we're not entirely sure. We just have to dig deep and figure it out.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But it's crazy how it affects everyone differently.
Yeah, exactly. I've just so enjoyed you sharing your story with us and with me in particular, and just your vulnerability. And I'll just be so curious that if you had your time again from the beginning, is there anything that you would do differently? Is there anything where you before having Clark, is there anything where you sort of go, I would have done this or this?
I think that I wouldn't have put so much pressure on myself to be an A+ mum, and just realize that everyone is different. You can't read a book and get the information that you need from a book, because every mum is different, and so is every baby. And I think that I would have asked for help a bit earlier.
Okay.
My mum was around and she could have been here every day if I needed her, but I didn't ask because I felt like I was putting everyone out. But yeah, I would have asked for help. I would have also given time to myself as well. Being kind to yourself, so that you had that space to not just be a mum.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And if there's someone listening right now who's in a similar position to, what you described 3 years ago or 2.5 years ago, let's say, and she's really scared. She doesn't want to talk to anyone. She's sort of, is feeling everything. She doesn't have the history that you have with depression. So no one is looking for her red flags. Yeah. What would you say?
Oh, I think I would say that it's okay, and it's okay to put your hand up and ask for help, even if you do it in the smallest way. It really does make a big difference. And once you do ask for the help, as hard as it will be to initially ask for it, you will feel so much better. You will feel like 20 kilos is off your shoulders.
That's great advice. Yeah. That's really great advice. And one last question, which, I mean, none of these questions are easy, so I apologize. Yeah. It's been 3 years now. Clark just turned 3 a week or so ago. And it's been a massive roller coaster and a huge journey for you already, and you're still going. Yeah. How do you feel this experience has not just what happened, but also how you dealt with it, and you know, the techniques and things you put in place to create the life that you're living now. How would you say it's changed you as a person?
Well, I definitely always thought that I was a very strong person, but I am definitely a lot stronger and more confident. I'm more confident to talk about my own story. And I think that I have grown stronger with my emotional health for myself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel more confident as a woman, which I didn't which I didn't feel previously before having Clark, which I think is quite interesting because a lot of people may become less confident because of their body changing after having a baby.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel a lot more confident, and I don't judge myself as much as I used to, which is quite a nice feeling.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
from where you know, how you described before, how from where you've come from. That sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it's
It
nice.
sounds like you're definitely on the right track.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just wanted to say thanks again. Unless there's anything else you want to add and share.
No, I think I'm good, but
You're
no,
good.
definitely I think you just need to be kind to yourself, and you also have to be kind to others if you're listening to this and you're not a mum.
Yeah.
Um, if you're thinking of becoming a mum and you've got a friend out there that is a mum, I don't know, maybe just reach out and ask if they're okay,
Mm,
because that may be the one thing that they need to hear the day that you
mm,
ask it.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
and you will know as soon as you ask the question, even if they don't say anything, you will know whether they need
Yeah.
help or not. Am I
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, you will.
Yeah, yeah.
Even
Oh,
just go over and do their laundry.
that's right. Or a cup of tea or something.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, Beck, you're
definitely.
wonderful. Honestly, like the things that you're doing are just amazing. And, you know, I wish you so much luck with your writing your book. I know the blood, sweat and tears that
Yeah.
go into writing a book. So I'm
Yeah.
100% behind you on that. But yeah, just thank you for being so open and so vulnerable and so real, and just sharing yourself so truly with everyone, so that, you know, other women and men can benefit
Yeah,
from it as well. So thank you. And thank
definitely.
you for sharing yourself with us today. I really,
No
really
problem.
appreciate it.
No problem. All good.
Thanks. Bye.
See you.